So this is going to be the video that I wish existed when I started coding. There's a bunch of free resources out there. You can learn pretty much anything you want online. But the only thing is, if you're a beginner, you have no idea where to start. So in this video, I'm going to tackle the idea if I were to start again today from the start, how I would go about it. So a little bit of background about me. I have my master's in computer science and I am a full-time software consultant right now. So when it comes to getting an education, there's 3 different paths you can take. The first of those, of course, being the most traditional, would just be going to college. It's what I did. It works, but there's of course pros and cons to everything. The next path would be being completely self-taught and just learning with online resources such as YouTube or maybe a Udemy course. And the third path would be paying for a coding boot camp. So I will probably end up making videos on each of these paths and comparing them, but that isn't the main point of this video. The main point is how to learn more from what you're doing and go above and beyond so that you can actually get a job. So I won't go too in-depth into it in this video, but the main outline of all these different options is the fact that college is a very long-term commitment. You have to fork up a lot of money for it, but you'll have that feedback from professors, you'll have a constructive environment, and you'll have this outline around you where it's not completely dependent on you, pushing yourself forward. There'll always be that you realizing that you paid money for this, you have to do it. And it won't be easy to quit if you have problems with commitment. And of course, you're going to be working with professors who most likely know a lot and can help you a lot. So of course, that's probably a pretty good thing to have. So for being 100% self-taught through online resources, I personally, if I could do it again, I would choose this route. But it's not as easy as it sounds. It's also not as hard as it sounds. You really need that willpower to learn. So if you're kind of unsure or you got other stuff going on, and you can't really dedicate the time just on your own free time, this might not be the right choice for you. But if you really have that drive to learn and you really want to do it, I think this is the fastest. And of course, it can basically be free. And I think it's the best way to go about it personally. So I've never done a coding boot camp, so I can't speak from experience, but I've heard good things about them. It is, it costs money. It's not free. It's definitely a good chunk of money, but certainly not as much as college. And it's going to be a lot of work really quick, but it'll be quicker than college. It's kind of like a median of college and learning by yourself. So if you really want to learn and you got the money to spend on it, but you also want someone to, get feedback from and, you need some sort of guidance, then a coding bootcamp might be right for you. So once you have your path of education sorted out and you kind of know what you're going to do, right? So next, I would say it's hard to do this without understanding exactly what's going on, but try to have an idea of what your dream job would be. You want to work on websites, you want to make applications, try to have some sort of rough idea, and that will lead us into our next part when it comes to choosing a language. So I'll give you an example of how to choose, and take this with a grain of salt. I myself am not that creative of a person. I'm much more logical, and my brain just works like that. So for me, it was a no-brainer understanding that I wouldn't want to do, website design or anything graphical like that, anything where you need to make something that's appealing to an end user. And I just don't have the eyes for it, which is fine. Everyone's better at different things. But for me, I wanted to work on, like applications and back-end stuff that's running programs that work and run. To me, that was the most interesting, and getting the logic all set up right. So I would say the main takeaway from that is to identify what you're good at and what's interesting to you, and then go from here. We're not going to be set in stone with whatever language you start learning is what you're going to do till the day you die. Once you know the basics, you can pick up another language perfectly fine. It's really not that big of a deal. But of course, it would be better to start in the language that, you want a job in. So if you're unsure of which way you want to go with it and you really can't identify it and you don't know enough, that's perfectly fine. It really is a tall task. I think it's just worth asking yourself and seeing if you can come up with an answer like that. But if you don't know, I would definitely start with JavaScript. It is the most flexible. It can be used for front end, back end, you name it. It can do pretty much everything. Now, for me personally, since I knew that I wanted to do backend, I went the Java route. You could do C or C++, both are perfectly fine options. But for me, Java made the most sense, and I really like the way it's laid out and how it takes care of certain things. But if you're unsure, then JavaScript is 100% the right option to start with. If you really find yourself as a creative person and you like the idea of designing websites for people, perhaps freelancing, I would definitely go about starting with HTML and CSS. Those are the key components of designing a website, and JavaScript is adding the functionality to it. So something else that I would really focus on that isn't really taught in school as much, but I think is a very important skill, is using and mastering Git. So I would definitely look into that. I can link a video below on how to get started with it. But the whole idea of it is to safely push your changes to your code and store them and be able to have backups of older versions. You can see all the changes. It's a very, very, very important tool that is not stressed enough in education. I cannot think of a job that wouldn't want you to use Git, and it's something you're going to need to learn. The earlier you can start, the better. And also, it'll just help you be more organized in general, it'll help you correct a few errors. If you accidentally make a horrible mistake and delete something and you don't remember what you had, it's really great for that because you can just grab the older version and call it a day. So I would definitely exhaust a free course on whatever you choose to go through all the basics of it. And then I would start looking for beginner projects and making these and putting them on your GitHub profile publicly. Especially if you're self-taught, these are what make or break your resume, literally. These are what people are going to look for, because if they go to your resume and see you have an education, that's fine, but they need some sort of proof you know what you're doing, right? So they go to your GitHub and they see your projects. Now, you want these to display some sort of knowledge, but they don't have to be the next best amazing thing. They just have to show that you can understand and implement certain concepts. And I would try to make each project implement a different concept so you can show how well-rounded you are, implementing a different technology. Or, for example, maybe you have a beginner Java program that connects to a database, right? So you're showing that you have skills using SQL and JDBC, and you could put that on your resume, and it's something to talk about in an interview. And of course, if you did want to do front-end development like web design, you could just make a mock beginner website with no JavaScript, just having something that looks pretty and looks clean and good. And even that's enough to make a talking point and something to show off and be proud of. So despite the fact that I just said, it doesn't have to be amazing, make sure it's not horrible too, right? Like, I would definitely wait like a month or two and then start working on beginner projects just so you can make something that shows you have a little bit of knowledge that not just some average Joe that just started learning 2 days ago could do. So let's say you understand all the basics, you got a few beginner projects, you understand a few different little technologies and concepts. You can do different things with whatever path you're choosing, which is great. So one thing I would recommend for both of them is to understand a cloud platform and Kubernetes. Pretty much every organization is deploying applications and websites to the cloud these days, and they need some sort of container orchestration with Kubernetes. If you go look at job descriptions these days, you will 100% see all of them want you to be familiar with cloud platforms and Kubernetes. And I'll definitely link beginner videos for both of them in the description, but all I would try to do, and one project that helped me get my job 100%, was just deploying a simple application to the cloud and hooking it up to a database. So I'm sure if you've never coded anything before and this is your first video you're watching, that sounds like a pretty daunting task. But in my opinion, that project helped me get my job, and it displays so many good skills while not being too in-depth to the point where it's going to take you years to be able to do something like that. Right, so now you have your GitHub with a few projects, you have your application deployed on a cloud platform. The next step would definitely be to start practicing LeetCode. LeetCode does not apply for front-end and web development. If you're gonna go that route, just keep making projects. But if you wanna do back-end, then definitely practice LeetCode. So for those who don't know, LeetCode's a website where it gives you pretty intense programming problems, and interviewers will literally grab questions from this website and ask you them on the spot. So in theory, if you practice hard enough and practice, all the free ones, then you'll be able to see what you need and be able to learn what you need. And then you'll be ready if they ask you a question on the spot. Now, I've never used it, so I can't vouch for it one way or another, but they do offer a premium service that will show you different questions that other certain companies are known to ask. So take it with a grain of salt, do your own research, but just know that is an option if you did want to practice hard for a month and figure out what you need to practice the most based on where you're applying to. One thing I should also stress is if you decide to go with the college route, it's not like just a degree will get you a job. That's a complete thing of the past. I figured that out when I finished undergrad. I didn't have any projects or anything, and no one wanted to hire me. It's the sad reality of it, but it's worth saying. If you want to go to school and go about it that route, just do a couple projects on the side. You don't have to completely, go gung-ho crazy and make a million of them. But if you have a couple good ones, and you're already going to have your plate full with learning through school in general, so just try to come up with 2 or 3 actually good quality ones before you're about to graduate, and you should be good. So I believe if you follow this as a rough guideline and accomplish all the tasks that I put out there and apply for jobs, you can find something 100%. The timeline is going to be different for everyone. Don't be discouraged if it's taking you, longer than some of your friends who are self-taught. Go at your own pace, but just choose the path that's right for you and makes the most sense for you. Don't commit to college if you know you have commitment issues because it's a lot of money and a lot of time. Choose what's right for you. Just understand what you need to do to get a job, and you should be fine. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you like this type of video. I definitely like making them a lot, and I also like making the tutorials, as you know. So yeah, just let me know what you want to see more in the future, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Thanks a lot, guys.